Hi, I'm so excited to finally be here with you. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode, I guess we can call it, to kick this off. This has really been a dream of mine for a really long time. And when we talk about dream, where do we start? Is it something from the past? Is it something new? Where's the origin? And so when I was getting everything ready for this, let's say, episode, or this video, or this podcast, wherever you're tuning in from, um, one thing kept coming up for me of like, where do I start? Where do I begin? What story am I sharing? What do I share even? And so there was really one pinnacle moment that has occurred in my life that there's been a few pretty big ones, but this one is kind of one that keeps coming back to me when I ask the question, where do I start? And so it was a life-changing accident that occurred last year, and I have never broken a bone in my body. And I was thrown off a horse, and not at work. I was in a horseback riding lesson with my daughter, and I had been supporting her, learning to tack on and to tack off. And I decided, you know what? Why don't I just join you? Because she was doing single lessons, private lessons, so I might as well join her. And it was our second lesson, and it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon no, it was winter, January 7th. And I remember so clearly, the sky was so blue. It was one of those days that you could wear your sunglasses, but you're wearing your winter gear. So it's very fashionable. And it was just a crisp day. And I had my jeans on that had pen marks on it. A pen blew up in my pocket. I remember those specific jeans. And my Blundstones that were a little bit too tight, and we were off we went to the lesson. And I just remember saying to my horse, Dottie, her name was Dottie, and I had ridden her once before. And I just said, okay, let's have a good day today. Cause she was kind of known for her flair, I guess. And so, they put me on her as a beginner, and I got on her that day, and I said, yeah, let's have a good day today. And we're, um, not quite trotting, just walking. And before we even got to the end of one side of the pen, we were just about to turn. I don't even think it was a minute in. And next thing I knew, I was being thrown in the air. And I guess all my martial arts training had come back to me, and I crunched in and everything was tight. And then that moment when it feels like you're in the air forever, that I had that moment. And then whoa, boom, thud, I landed, and it just was the most excruciating pain I'd ever experienced. And I was screaming. And, fast forward, I guess my daughter was the only one who saw me. They were worried I was going to get trampled. So she couldn't even come to me, and she was holding her horse at the other side. And all I wanted to do was get into a child's pose position. And I knew I shouldn't, but that's all I wanted to do because it was so sore on my back. And people came running, and they're like, just don't move, don't move. And one thing someone said to me when I was on the cold ground staring at the very blue sky, which quickly seemed like a very gray sky to me in that moment. I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, real horse riders fall off 100 times before you can call yourself a real horse rider. And I said, you know what? I don't need to be a real horse rider. I'm good. Anyways, I got the ambulance to come. They had stood me up, put me on a stretcher. I don't even think they put me on a stretcher, to be honest. I can't remember, but they stood me up. My husband ended up showing up, and he had been a first aid before, and he was wondering why, and I was wondering why. But at that point, I just want to be taken care of. So they took me to the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital, and I was in shock. So I was freezing. I ended up in the hospital for 6 hours in the emergency room, sitting in a chair. And I remember this most vulnerable moment of when they put a bag on my lap, and it was my shoes. And in that moment, I was in so much pain, I couldn't move. And I didn't even know where I was. They had just rolled me into an area. and I couldn't see behind me because I couldn't turn around or anything. All I could do was just breathe and just become one with the pain. And I remember in that moment, I just thought to myself, my dirty shoes are on my lap. I'm soaking wet. If there was an incident where there was an earthquake or something of an emergency of that degree, I wouldn't be able to help myself. And I've never had that feeling before because I've been always very able-bodied and active and really grateful for having movement. And so in that moment was probably the most vulnerable I'd ever felt. And I never wanted anyone to feel that. In that moment, I was like, I never want anyone to feel this vulnerable or alone. So anyway, that was the beginning of it. And, you know, I was there for 6 hours, and then being, you know, in a hospital in the medical system, the conversation usually comes up where I've been on a show. They usually ask what you do for work. I'm an actor, and I've been on a show, The Good Doctor, and everyone gets really excited. And I swear, as soon as that happened, they funneled me faster through the system, and I got a CT scan and I got my results. I wish I would have known. I would have told them earlier. And I did break my back. They told me I'd broken it, even though before the paramedic left, they had asked me to get up from the stretcher or the stretcher. And, right. So I was in a stretcher. I wasn't on a hard board. And so he said to me, he leaned down beside me and said, you know, I went through something like this. I went over the handlebars on my mountain bike a couple weeks ago. They'll probably send you home in a couple hours with a couple bruises. That's literally what he said to me. And so I was trying to stay positive. Anyway, I ended up in the trauma unit for 2 nights, bedridden, because they had to make sure that the spinal cord wasn't touched from the burst bone, the spine. The L2. I had a compression fracture on my L2. Apparently, if you're going to have any type of back injury, that's the best type of fracture is a compression fracture because you can heal and recover from it. That was life-changing. And I guess that's where this all begins. Me showing up here online, sharing this time with you. And really, it still took me about 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years to really figure out how I wanted to show up here with you. And my intention for this space is for it to be honest and raw and vulnerable and a safe place where we can share the real truth of what happens beneath all the things that we're doing. You know, we're doing things all the time. We're working, we're taking care of our families, our children, ourselves, our jobs, our careers, our animals, our pets, and our land. And underneath the surface, there's always something happening. You know, what are we feeling? What are we processing? What are we experiencing? And all these things that we're doing. And so, in addition to all the things that I'm creating online right now, and working on different projects in front of the camera and behind the scenes, I really feel a strong calling towards creating a space that I hope that this can be where we show up together and we really drop into the truth beyond the surface. And that's my hope and intention with this space and this time with you, and that it also becomes a space for you to come to feel inspired, reminded of your authentic self for support or guidance or whatever it is you need. We're going to have laughs along the way. It's not going to be all tears and seriousness, of course, because it's through that where we find the real joy, the real laughter that really moves through your soul. And I want to support you on your journey to showing up on camera if that's what you need to do, and just showing up in life and in all your relationships and all the things that you touch with the time where you're doing things with your career, your family, your friends, your animals, your land, whatever is calling you. And of course, being more present in your everyday life. This is the place where we don't have to turn on, we just tune in. So that's where I feel would be the best place to start this journey together is from the most vulnerable moment. And from there, we grow and we reflect and we evolve and we go back in time to heal parts of us that need attention. And so starting here, we begin our journey. And I look forward to continuing this with you. Moral of this story, where we're beginning here is really sometimes the most vulnerable moments are the moments that give us the most strength. So I invite you to tune into yourself and remember a really vulnerable moment and to see how it might have transformed and evolved your journey into one of strength and passion and clarity. And not that that's always where it has to go, but it can be the beginning of something miraculous and powerful and important to share with the rest of the world or to the people that feel called to connect with where you are at your journey now. So to witness each other on our evolution together. Till the next one.